Do you have a seam where your fabric is fraying? Hello friends, I'm Nancy. A French seam could be just what you need to make your edges neat and your seam elegant. With a French seam, the outside of our seam looks like many other seams that use straight stitching. On the inside, we'll have a tidy seam that contains any fraying inside of the seam, and it also hides the seam allowance. Did you know that learning how to sew a French seam can be good for you? I'll explain why later. Now, let's get going with sewing our French seam. We begin by putting the wrong sides of the fabric together. For the fabric we're using today, the right side is darker in color than the wrong side of the fabric. The right side is also known as the front, and the wrong side is known as the back. We'll trim the fraying fabric edges for a cleaner edge while we sew. Next, we'll pin the two pieces of fabric together. On our sewing machine, a lower number means a shorter stitch, and a higher number means a longer stitch. We'll set our stitch length to about 2.5. Today, we'll be using the first groove in the needle plate, also called the throat plate, as a guide for our seam width. This first groove will be a guide for our 3/8 inch seam. To help with sewing a straight seam, we can place a piece of painter's tape or another type of tape that you have on hand right next to the 3/8 inch groove on our machine like this. As we're sewing, we can use the tape as a reference for where the edge of our fabric should be. We start by backstitching a few stitches, then off we go. We finish the seam with a few back stitches and then snip off the thread ends. Next, we'll trim the seam allowance to about 1/8 of an inch, making sure that we don't cut any of our stitches with the scissors. We press our seam flat in one direction. Then we flip the fabric over and press the seam on the wrong side of the fabric. We put the right sides of the fabric together with the seam very close to the edge, and we press again. We pin the folded side together and we'll head back to the sewing machine. Once again, we sew a 3/8 inch seam. We open up our fabric so the wrong side is facing up, and we press the seam in one direction. Voila! We've just completed our beautiful French seam. Smooth and neat on the outside, tidy and elegant on the inside. How can learning a new skill like we did today benefit our well-being? It can give us a sense of accomplishment and boost our self-esteem. Click the end card for more sewing tips and techniques. Until next time.